Welcome to this video essay. Before diving in, if you prefer reading over watching, check out my Substack, where you'll find the essays accompanying each video. To subscribe and get them delivered to your inbox, just scan the QR code if you're watching, and if you're listening, use the link in the description. If you enjoy this video or have any thoughts on the subject, let me know in the comments on YouTube, and please share it with your friends, family and followers. Lastly, if you appreciate the effort that Kirsty and I put into this content and want to support our work, please consider becoming a supporter on Locals. All links are in the description. Thanks for being here, and let's dive in. In part 1 of the Free Will series, we explored fatalism. Looking ahead, part 3 will delve into compatibilism. This essay, part 2, will explore determinism through the lens of choice and briefly touch upon probabilistic theory to close. As I said in part 1, the free will landscape is vast. Books have been written about each of our 3 topics, and I, for one, do not intend to break new ground. Instead, I want to see where my mind is today as we survey the subject's landscape. In the last essay, we defined determinism in a subject-centric way. I said it is the claim that prior conditions determine every choice taken in the course of a life, and thus all choices are totally outside of the agent's control. I want to keep our subject-centric focus for all 3 of these essays. This will enable us to be more honest and reflective about these philosophical ideas and their implications. I need to lay some groundwork about choice before we discuss determinism specifically. So let's dive in. Choice. Do you or I have the choice to do something other than what you or I do at any given moment? This is the question that's often asked when people begin to question determinism from a subject-centric perspective. By posing such a question, we suggest that if there is no principle of alternative possibilities, or PAP for short, a technical term within the free will debate, then we don't, in fact, have any freedom. Now, I don't think there is any way to prove that an agent could have taken any other action than the one they actually took. So, I assume that most people decide if it's possible to take an action other than the one they do based on psychological and religious stances, which itself is grounded on their view of persons and whether they are reductive or non-reductive. To examine this further, I want to give you an example of an actual decision you must make shortly. But before I do, I want to ask you to pay close attention to what is going on within you when you make this decision. Attend to the interoceptional phenomenon that arise, the what it's likeness that occurs, and recognize the proprioceptional phenomenon as well, how your body shifts in space as you adjust your face, your posture, etc. Try to witness the process of making a decision as I present this example. It's a simple example, but we don't only want your decision, rather and more importantly, we want to glean your phenomenological decision-making experience, the what it's like to make the decision. Here we go. You're either listening to or watching or reading these words, and the chances are that you aren't subscribed to both the YouTube channel and the Substack, as the analytics tell me that most readers and viewers are not subscribed at all. So here it is. Here is the request that requires you to make your choice. will you subscribe to the YouTube channel and or Substack? Think about it. What is it like phenomenologically as you consider the request to subscribe over on those platforms? Okay, now decide and take action, or don't, on the decision. Don't worry, I'll wait here whilst you use the links provided to go and subscribe. For this example, let's assume that you've already subscribed on YouTube but hadn't signed up over on Substack. So you've just navigated there and signed up. Thanks, by the way. This decision has three elements. A, the weighing of the request, the phenomenological what it's likeness. B, the decision coming to the fore of your awareness. And then C, the outcome, the action or non-action based on the decision. We could also add a D, the lapse of an action or eventual non-action following a decision to act, but that's just picking at straws and not necessary for the heart of our investigation. In fact, for our purposes, we only need to think about A and B because we're trying to examine the idea of being able to do other than we in fact did. So, what was it like? What did you experience phenomenologically as you considered the request? What was it like when you realized you knew your decision as it rose within your consciousness? Did it start as a thought? Or was it initially a feeling? Did it cause you to pause and think? Or did you have an instant knee-jerk reaction that provided instantaneous clarity? It is here, in this space, that I think a true mystery attains. Something within us conforms to external stimuli, presented here in the form of a request for action. And as this internal process navigates and completes within us, we are presented with our findings, and upon these we act or do not. With this in hand, let's return to our question. Do you or I have the choice to do something other than what you or I do at any given moment? I think such a question confuses the reality of the decision-making process to which we've just paid close attention. We don't know what we would do in any situation until we are presented with it physically or hypothetically. There seems, as I attend to my phenomenological decision-making processes, to be a partially subconscious element that takes place, as well as a host of emotions, images, and negotiations that arise in the fore. As far as I can tell, as I spend time witnessing myself making decisions, I discover my decisions. I don't decide them. There doesn't seem to be a judge or a me sitting behind my mind, processing the external world and decreeing laws of directionality. I am the processing. I am the choice. I actually think that this position holds even if you are a substance dualist, which would mean you believe that the mind or soul and body are two distinct substances. Why? Well, let's say for a moment that souls do in fact exist and are attached to all conscious creatures. This doesn't change the phenomenological what it's likeness of decision making. We are still left in the dark when it comes to how we arrive at the decisions that we make. There is still an amalgamation of subconscious and conscious phenomenon that deliver a choice. Substance dualism doesn't provide a chair or substance for the judge to sit on outside of the decision-making process. A soul would be just as entangled in decision-making as a physicalist's materialistic processes. Because of this, I struggle to understand what it would mean for me to be able to do something other than what I do at any given moment. And so the principle of alternative possibilities doesn't seem to attain in the way required for free will to be instantiated. So what does this all have to do with determinism? Determinism's scope. If we can't get back to the root to see how we make our decisions, as I've already said, our psychological and religious stances will ultimately determine our philosophical outlook. Most people are prone to believe they have free will and make decisions based on what they deem to be the correct course of action in any situation. The skeptic will insist there is no basis for this inference, and that the most likely cause or decision of event C, actualized by the agent or not, is due to prior causes of event B, which itself were instantiated by event A before it. For example, it is often claimed that the Earth couldn't have come to be if it wasn't for the plethora of circumstances and objects that brought it into existence, which in turn were brought about by prior circumstances and objects, and that this chain of circumstances and objects or events goes all the way to the start of physical reality itself. And by physical, I mean material existence and the necessary underpinning and substantiating laws. On the face of it, physical reality intuitively conforms to deterministic causality, given the consistent nature of matter and the governing framework of physical laws. Physical reality seems causally closed. Every event is pre-authored by prior events, and without an external actor able to freely instantiate events, there isn't any space for events to not be causally instantiated. If physical reality is causally closed, then the next question is, would it then hold that our decisions are also brought about by mental properties and events that are causally closed and deterministic? Again, given our findings following the phenomenological exercise above and on the principle of alternative possibilities, you'd need to posit something outside of reality and show that it has the ability to take one action over one or more actions when decision points arise. The I that we think free will is fundamentally attached to is a notion of self that when looked for vanishes like morning mist to the midday sun. This idea of a separate observer outside of oneself doesn't hold purchase. Instead, we seem to find that we aren't making decisions. We are the processing. We are the decision making. I would suggest that if free will holds, it must conform to this revised notion of self and thus negate the principle of alternative possibilities. But this, given our apparent deterministic framework, is getting more and more complicated to do. Free will is on the ropes. We'll explore ways that philosophers have aimed to salvage free will through compatibilism in part 3, but for now I want to say a word on probability theory. Probability theory. Reality, as we've explored, seems causally closed, and now I want to examine the lockstep with which events transpire. Probability theory helps us to understand systems where outcomes are uncertain, describing the likelihood of events rather than asserting deterministic causality. So, does it allow for free will, or does it merely mask determinism with randomness? At its core, probability theory introduces indeterminism, especially in quantum mechanics, where events like radioactive decay seem random. Some argue this randomness offers a space for free will by breaking deterministic chains, yet randomness alone doesn't support free will. Decisions rooted in randomness lack agency. They are not deliberate or intentional. uncertainty doesn't magically grant the coherence that free will requires to be instantiated. Mathematics formalizes probabilities, describing behaviors across scales from dice rolls to neural activity. It shows patterns, but cannot capture the subjective experience of choosing or the grounding of agency itself. Decision theory, for example, frames choices as utility maximizing computations influenced by prior states, suggesting choice is a byproduct of deterministic or probabilistic processes, not free agency. Genetics adds another layer. DNA provides instructions, but probabilistic factors like mutations or environmental triggers introduce variation. While these processes create differences in traits, they remain causal. Even a predisposition to risk-taking is linked to specific genes and relies on probabilistic interactions to manifest. This variability doesn't transcend causality, it simply diversifies its outcomes. Thus, probability theory does not carve out a space for free will. Randomness introduces uncertainty but not intentionality. Mathematics and genetics reinforce the deterministic framework, mapping influences and constraints, but failing to provide the agency free will requires. We are in deep waters now, and without going on at much greater length, I don't think I can do determinism any further justice here. Part 1 focused on fatalism, and today we've explored determinism. I believe this has set us up nicely for part 3, when we'll look at compatibilism and what tools might be available to salvage free will.